common objections or questions that I'll hear about God, especially from if I'm talking to people who are not religious, whether they've studied religion or they've never really given it that much thought, but they'll often mention this problem of evil. In fact, I've even seen many Christians kind of struggle and wrestle, continue to wrestle, even within their faith, over this question of the problem of evil. Why does evil, pain, and suffering exist? Why do we have to experience hardship and pain? And some people will kind of put the problem this way, if God is all loving, then wouldn't he want to get rid of all pain and suffering and evil? Why wouldn't he want to stop evil? And then if God was all powerful, couldn't he do it? And so if God is all loving and all powerful, shouldn't there be no evil, no pain, no suffering, nothing bad in the world? Because God would be loving enough to want to stop it and capable of stopping it. So since evil and suffering and pain do exist, we do experience these things, then God must be either not all loving or not all powerful. He wants to stop evil, but he can't. Or maybe no God exists at all, and that kind of explains why there's evil. Because if a God existed like the God described in the Bible, that God would want to stop all evil, and so evil would not exist. Now, I think it makes some degree of sense, this kind of line of thinking, so long as you assume that a God who is loving and powerful, all loving and all powerful, that God would for sure stop all evil if they had the opportunity. If that was true, then yeah, I think there's a problem. But if there is a reason that God, even though he is loving, and even though he's powerful enough to stop evil, would choose to allow evil to occur, then there's less power in this argument. I think if there is a reason, a sufficient reason that God would want to allow evil for some reason to occur, even though he doesn't want people to suffer and he is powerful enough to prevent their suffering, if there was some reason that he would allow this, then I think the argument against God is less powerful. I think if there is a possible reason that God would allow evil, then the logical problem against God kind of goes away, or it's at least reduced in its power. Now, I think the question then becomes, why would God want to allow for evil, pain, or suffering to exist? And this is a little bit harder of a question. I think sometimes as a Christian, I wish I understood God's motivations more than I do. And I can tell you that the Bible, there's portions of the Bible that speak to God's character. What is he like? And there's parts of the Bible where it will say, God wanted to accomplish this, so he did that. But there's a lot of portions of the Bible where God acts and we're told what he did, but we're not necessarily told why he did it. I mean, one of the biggest questions I've always had as a Christian is, why would God create to begin with? God exists and he has not created the universe yet. Why would he even choose to create the universe and choose to create people to begin with? I mean, what was his feelings? What was he thinking about when he chose to create? And the Bible, it says some things about God. We could maybe make some inferences or some educated guesses as to what might have motivated God. But the Bible is not spelling out specifically, explicitly, why God is acting a certain way. And so I think sometimes there's certain things where God might act a certain way, and we may not be able to know for sure why exactly he's acting. But I think there's something in human curiosity, or at least in my personal curiosity, that even though the answer might not be available to me, I still want to ask the question. I still want to know. Even if there's if I can't know for sure why God would allow evil, or for sure why God would create, I still kind of want to ask the question. So I think that we can kind of think through things. I'm not the only one who's thought about these questions, obviously. And some Christian apologists and philosophers have offered a number of possibilities to explain why would God, who is all loving and all powerful, still allow evil. Now, just one of them I thought we'd talk about today is this idea of maturing his creation, or sometimes you'll hear it referred to as soul making. This idea that God doesn't just create these people, but he wants these people to be as mature and as strong in their character as possible. And so he creates people, but throughout each of our lives, God might create certain circumstances which will give us the opportunity, if maybe the onus is on us to take advantage of the opportunity, but give us the opportunity to mature and become more refined, have better character, have better, be more patient, more loving, etc. And that God might allow evil to occur to us or put us through hard times as a way of sort of refining us. It gives us an opportunity to overcome an obstacle and become more stronger on the other side of it. Now, I think there is some scientific evidence that would sort of suggest that experiencing evil in pain and suffering and hard times does give the opportunity for improvement. Oftentimes we'll hear about post-traumatic stress disorder. I think that's a often talked about psychological phenomenon. And this is this idea that people who go through traumatic experiences will have negative or difficult side effects as a result of their trauma. We call PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. And this certainly is true. There's also a body of literature that I don't hear as mentioned as much, and this is called post-traumatic growth. And this is an area of psychology that studies the way that people grow after experiencing trauma. In fact, some studies would say that an overwhelming majority of people who experience trauma experience growth as a result of that trauma. Now, that's not to say that they experience growth instead of the stress or the anxiety or the emotional side of trauma. People even who experience things like PTSD or other side effects of trauma may still also experience growth right alongside it. And the idea behind this, kind of to summarize it, maybe to hopefully not oversimplify it, but kind of put it simply, is the idea that trauma will often force us to reconsider serious things in our life. A lot of times traumatic events are events that kind of cause us to question foundational beliefs that we had about the world. We thought the world was one way, or that we had a certain expectation of what our life was going to be like, or what kind of things we might experience. And then this trauma kind of forced us to reconsider those basic fundamental questions. Is the world, is reality really the way that we thought it was or were expecting it to be? And this is scientists, researchers, they have found that asking these fundamental questions has caused people to have a more creative or more open-minded outlook sometimes on the backside of their trauma. And this leads to changes in the relationships that they have with people, the way that they view things like spirituality, religion, the way that they sometimes basic questions about life that they might have taken for granted. Now they're asking serious questions about life. What's the meaning? Where does meaning come from? What's the purpose of all this? Why am I experiencing this? What's my ultimate goal in life? These kinds of big questions. Now, these are I think if you think about it, these are the same questions that they would be asking are the kinds of questions that God might want to get you to ask. A lot of us, I know I can say this is true for me. I can become kind of stagnant in my life. And I'm just going through my daily motions. I can fall into a certain rhythm. And now I'm not being as conscientious about the way that I am growing closer to God, the way that I am maturing. I'm just kind of stagnant. But sometimes these even severe intrusions in our life kind of can wake us up into the, hey, what am I supposed to be again? What am I supposed to be doing right now? And these are the kinds of questions that God could use to call someone to Him. So I think that there is potential positive benefits to experiencing something like evil in our life, suffering. Now, this is not to say that this is for sure the reason God allows pain and suffering, or the only reason. There may be a number of reasons that God will allow such a thing, but I think it kind of helps me because I can see that there is at least one possible answer to this question. If God is all loving and all powerful, why would He choose to allow pain and suffering? Is there any reason He would choose willingly, or is He just unable to stop it? I think that there might be some good reasons why God would choose to allow evil, pain, and suffering. And I think at the very least, even if this particular reason is not the reason, I think it kind of helps me to understand that there very well may be reasons, sufficient reasons for God, good reasons that God would allow us to experience evil, pain, suffering in the temporary lives that we lead, to help for some purpose, for some greater purpose that he has a goal. You know, God has a eternal goal for us. He's looking beyond just the 60, 80, 90, 100, hey, maybe we're lucky 100 years that we get to live this life. He's looking beyond that into eternity, and there may be good reasons why temporarily he would allow us to experience something like this. I don't think, therefore, that when we see evil or suffering in our own lives or in the lives of others around us, that this should cause us to think that God does not exist, or that God is not loving, or that God is not the God he says he is in the Bible. I think that at the very least, there's good reasons to think that the God of the Bible, if he does exist, might allow evil and pain and suffering into our lives temporarily for his greater purpose.